Mr. Don White, how are you today, sir?
I'm well, thank you. Nice to see you, Robert.
It's been a long time. Hey, listen, when you first used to come to the club, this whole technology thing didn't exist. I mean, cell phones barely did, video cameras, no, social media, internet. Uh,
No, I used to take a horse and buggy to the event to to drive down the Mass Pike in my horse and buggy. It was a long time ago, Robert.
how did all that change what happened in your career? All this change in technology.
Well, adapt or die would be one thing, right? You cannot possibly function and have the business side of your career and not and be a Luddite at this point,
Yeah.
unless you have the money to pay someone to do it for you. So it changed everything. It made anything that I learned back then, like I teach quite a bit now. I teach, all kinds of things, but it eventually would get around to how do I get gigs? If you're teaching musicians or storytellers or whatever, they come in under the under the umbrella of wanting to learn how to be better at their craft, but eventually they'll want to know how to do it. And I have to say to them, every way that I learned how to do it is obsolete now. We used to send postcards to people and all that stuff. So, the old system is gone. I think
Do you remember your first visit to the old Vienna?
I remember it well.
Tell
I
me.
went yeah, I documented it on one of my records. I went out there, but, people had been talking about it. I drove, it was quite a long way. I'd worked all day. It was cold, snowy, and I got there, and I signed up, and it was like number, I don't know, 50, 28, or, like the very end. By the time, I waited around, and by the time I got on stage, they were putting the chairs on the tables. It was you and but, just a couple of people left. And I drove home going, that place sucks. I'm not going back there no more. And then the next day, Tim called me and asked me if I wanted to open for Taj Mahal. And at the time, I had never opened for anybody. And I said to him, I came out the other night, and I really love that place. It's a really great place. So, yeah, I remember it well. And I think that's one thing I do want to talk about with our limited time here is I took for granted the system that was in place for developing talent there. And I was thinking about this morning. I I assumed every place was like that, where they would develop you, give you a chance to build an audience. But thinking back, I don't know that I can think of any. I've opened for a lot of people in other venues, but it never was from working up through the system. It was different. Somebody saw me somewhere else and pulled me in to do it. But the old Vienna, if for people that don't know, had a like it was like the minor leagues. It was like a headliner manufacturing plant or something system, right? You would come in, do the open mic, the people, the host, and Tim Mason would be there, and they would be looking for somebody that could open for somebody, right? So and they would place you if you did well enough with somebody whose audience would like you. Like I opened, I think probably 20 or 30 times there, something like that, maybe at least 20. And always for somebody that was chatty and a storyteller, never for Harvey Reid or somebody that people were coming to
Yep.
see, dance with the guitar.
Yep.
It was always for Christine Lavin and Cheryl Wheeler and Bill Morrissey and people who talked, right? And so that decision to place me with headliners whose audience I could pilfer, right? I could take was so. I really took it for granted. I really thought that's the way it was everywhere, and it's not. Looking back on it, it's very rare. And so, you come in. That's like trip like single A. You play two songs. You get a feature. Feature at the open mic. That's like double A, and then triple A. You move up to maybe doing something in the room on your own.
Tim had that benefit and knack of finding the right act with the right act, the right opener with the right feature. And he put you in front of Christine Lavin. And that kind of took you literally around the country at the start of your career, wasn't it?
It was one of the, one of the big jumps. If you look back at a career that's sustained, that lived long enough to build an audience, you see a couple of jumps in there, and that was one of them. You know, in your little notes you sent me, there was a thing about, do you remember a backstage thing? So my backstage thing with her, she talks about it all the time because I toured with her for 9 years. So she would introduce me lots of the times by saying, the first time I opened for this guy opened for me, um, he wound the audience up so much that I had to start with a ballad. That's what she said. Which sounds like I'm bragging, right? But she says this. But anyway, backstage, she said to me, people say you're good. Play me a song." And I thought about it, and I thought about other times where I stood there and played a song for somebody, and halfway through it, somebody walked in the room, or it just seemed like impossible thing. And I go, "Nah, I don't want to." And she said, "You must be very good." Then she said, "If you were," and then she placed a folk singer's name in there, who I won't say. She goes, "If you were this person, you would have said, 'Sure, lady, I'm great. Here you go.'"
I still remember her trying to toss those fire batons in the low ceiling of the old Vienna.
She turned out to be a great friend of mine. So right after that, she helped me in New York and got me into the Bottom Line and on Vince Gelso's radio show. And then that kind of petered away. But then later, maybe a decade later, her and I started touring together, and we toured for 9 years. And so that can trace that all back to the old Vienna. I still have fans that I made from opening for other people there, who come to see me now. So yeah, the idea that it was a system that you could, it was designed for you to move up and build an audience. So that required, well, a good host for the open mic. It required that the venue had shows all the time. We couldn't be just doing one a month, right? It required that the person doing the booking was there all the time. And I think it helped that he wasn't a musician. It helped me because lots of times in those days, I wasn't very good. I didn't sing well or play well or anything, but he wasn't attached to that. Tim Mason. He saw that the audience liked me, and so I think I benefited from the fact that he had a view from outside, about outside the music world, to what to do. Um, yeah, I owe the place a great deal. I think when I look back at it, if I take it out of my story,
Mm.
maybe I still have a career, but I don't, have to happen some other way.